thanks for making time and coming on. This is our kind of pre-hurricane season boot camp. Boot camp was the only thing I could think of from a marketing standpoint to capture people's attention. But so first of all, congratulations on the promotion. Well deserved, and I'm glad it's you because you've been sitting in that spot for the past 2 years or so, and really unusual circumstances. So congratulations, and we look forward to working with you
I appreciate it, Eric.
in good times and in bad. So Kevin, what we wanted to do was we've got 3 of these scheduled this month. Next Friday, we have actually Joe Myers, the former EM director for Florida, really talk more about kind of the local level based on his experiences. And then on the third Friday, we're going to have a presenter on emergency communications. And so what we wanted to do really is just start kind of at a high level with you. We've got, since November, or at the November election, 93 new county commissioners, most of whom have probably never been through a hurricane in terms of that capacity and that role. And so we wanted to just start at the top level with the state, talk about the role of the state emergency management, how the authorities vested with the governor and with your agency, and how they operate with counties. And so actually, before I do that, I want to just kind of personalize this a little bit. Would you mind just talking about your background and really what led you to your current position?
Yeah. So first of all, Eric, thank you. And I appreciate the partnership that we have with you and Davin and the entire team over there. For you guys that don't know, Eric's got my personal cell phone number. Davin's got my personal cell phone number, and we talk quite a bit. So I think I want, number one, for all the commissioners to know that there are very, very strong ties here in Tallahassee between Florida Association of Counties and myself personally, as well as the division. I am a local guy, so I'll start there. I spent 23 and a half years with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in Jacksonville, Florida, as a police officer, and spent the last 8 years of my tenure there as the emergency management preparedness liaison from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office over to the Jacksonville Fire Rescue Department. My blue sky desk was in the Jacksonville Fire Rescue Department. So one of the things that we did unique there is that I was a police officer supervisor, actually embedded in the Fire Rescue Department and the Emergency Management Agency on blue sky as well as gray sky. So again, all about building partnerships there. From there, I retired and went to Flagler County, where I spent 2.5 years as the emergency management public safety manager. They're in Flagler County. Had the opportunity to move from a small county to a little bit larger county, actually by textbook definition, a large county, Pasco County, about 550,000 people, just north of Tampa and Pinellas. So went over there, started out as the emergency management director. Within about 6 weeks, I was promoted to emergency services director. And then about 8-9 months later after that, I was promoted to the assistant county administrator for public safety in Pasco, and spent about 1.5 years doing that job as the assistant county administrator. So again, kind of rooted in local level, kind of all levels, if you will, on the administrative side with county government. And then I came here, obviously, 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, to the Florida Division of Emergency Management on a loan from Pasco County. I want to thank the chairman at the time, Mike Wells, who allowed me to come here and work with Governor Scott for a lame duck session there for about 3 months. And then ultimately Governor DeSantis asked me to stay on as the deputy director, and obviously just a week ago appointed me as the next director of the division. So that's a little bit about me, my personal role. I'm an anomaly in that I'm an emergency management director rooted in law enforcement. But obviously, when I went to Pasco County, I oversaw a fire department there of about 27 fire stations. So certainly got some background in fire, some background, obviously, in law enforcement and emergency management as well. So that's a little bit about me. I appreciate Eric, again, for the association inviting me to come here today and being a part of this. And I think it's very, very important what you guys do is getting our commissioners and administrators up to speed on our highest risk, highest threat in the state, which is obviously tropical cyclones.
All right. Well, thank you for that. As I mentioned, let's kind of just go back to some of the basics. I think a lot of people have a working understanding of what emergency management is this day, at least in our state, for better or worse, just because of the hurricanes. But let's just talk about the overall mission of the division and what you're charged with doing.
Yeah, so the overall mission is, the generic answer is to respond to, recover from, prepare for, and mitigate against all disasters. I mean, that's the textbook definition, right? Let's drill into that just a little bit more. I think the Florida Division of Emergency Management, and maybe even at the local level, so as we educate the commissioners, emergency management is not the hurricane squad, all right? They do not just do hurricanes. And I think over the years, because hurricanes and tropical cyclones are our number one highest risk, it's automatically been associated. You talk about FEMA, you associate them with hurricanes in Florida. You talk about the Florida Division of Emergency Management or emergency management in general, you say, well, that's a hurricane, guys. I need all of us, and I'm going to try to do this in my tenure here as a director. We are so much more than that. What are the risks that affect your county? Pasco County, we were the sinkhole squad, we were the hurricane squad, we were the tornado squad. Even over in the Flagler County, my very first event in both Flagler and Pasco County were EF1 tornadoes. People don't necessarily remember that from year to year, Florida is usually somewhere between number 5 and number 10 in the country on the number of tornadoes that are spawned and actually touch down in the state of Florida. We're up there with the Oklahomas and the Nebraskas and the Texas. People don't remember that because in Florida, we have very fast moving, small in nature, what I call small in nature, 60-mile-an-hour tornadoes that are only about 100 yards, 200 yards wide versus the big massive tornadoes that are EF5s in obviously central United States. So don't get into this habit of saying that they're just the hurricane folks. They are every threat, risk, and hazard you have in your jurisdiction. They are that 1% entity that's going to respond when it exceeds the capability of your local sheriff, of your local fire rescue personnel, and you need to start bringing in resources from outside your jurisdiction. That is what I want people to equate to what the mission of emergency management, and then that's also the mission of the Florida Division of Emergency Management, is when your county exceeds its capabilities, you need to activate your emergency management. When they are activated, then they start to come to us to help bring in those extra resources from outside the area into your jurisdiction to help you respond to and recover from that incident. So that's the overarching mission, I think, on a day-to-day basis, is no matter what it is, if it's a water main break in Broward County that services 250,000 people, or it's the Piney Point environmental disaster, or it's the tornadoes that touched down in Polk County about a year ago, or it's a pandemic, or it's the hurricane that hit, Hurricane Michael. We are all of those things. The Florida Division of Emergency Management was involved in every one of those incidents, plus the wildfire season last year. That is overseen by and when I say overseen, financially overseen by our agency here. So there's so much more that we do other than hurricanes.
So how are you notified of all those, what I would less than major incidents? How do you know there's a water main break that is going to affect a community that may require some state assistance?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Eric. And the way that that's done is in Florida State Statute 252, there is a requirement for county governments and municipal governments to notify up that they have certain things going on. And that the book is about this thick. It's not horribly thick, but nevertheless, it's got quite a few types of incidents, whether they're, again, as we just said, environmental disasters, as we talk about public health with boil water notices and things of that nature, or if it's a major state road, interstate commerce that gets shut down because of a traffic fatality, that gets reported up to us. So everything that I mentioned, plus, road closures, airplanes that crash in the middle of across our state, there's a a myriad of incidents that get reported up by your local, what we usually refer to as PSAPs, or primary safety answering points, where your dispatch centers are at. Those typically get routed up to us. We do have a couple of counties that are doing pilots with us. That one of the pilots is from my previous county, Pasco County, where we automate that system so that when the original dispatch goes out to certain enumerated incidents, like a mass shooting or a wildfire more than 10 acres, they automatically send us an email notification to our state watch office. So we are actually on the cusp of coming out with capabilities that will allow dispatch centers to actually notify us electronically of that, and cut down the actual pick up the phone and call people. So we're excited about engaging technology here and automating a lot of those systems.
And on your side, the recipient of those notifications go to where? Is that the state warning point?
That's the state warning point, state watch office, synonymous. It's here. It's our 24. We do have a 24/7, 365 operation that happens here every day. So we do have, if you will, our own communication center that's up and running every day of the week, 24/7, 365, to have those incidents reported into.
So we talked about the mission of the division, how you respond to some of the minor incidents that occur. Can we talk about just the function of, you have your employees within the division, but there's something broader in terms of how you respond and coordinate resources, and I think it's called the State Emergency Response Team, the CERT. Can you talk about what that is and how that works?
So yeah, the State Emergency Response Team is made up of just about every state agency in government, right? So every state agency in government and state government is required to have what's referred to as emergency coordinating officers, or we call them ECOs here. Those ECOs for every agency are required to stay in touch with us, report back to their agency in times of activation. Beyond the ECOs, we have what is referred to as ESFs. So that's the next layer down, ESFs, and those are our emergency support functions. We have 18 of those emergency support functions, but you're hearing it first here today, Eric, in the Florida Association of Counties. Within the next couple of months, we'll be expanding to 20 ESFs. We're going to split ESF 12, which is fuels and energy, into two different ones. So we'll now have ESF 12 energy, and we'll have ESF 19 fuels. So we're going to separate those two because fuels typically has a tendency to run similarly with ESF 18, which is the Department of Economic Opportunity and private businesses, if you will. So your mom and pop gas stations and things of that nature, we have a lot more intersection with them here in the EOC. And then ESF 20 is going to be our cyber section. So we are going to, as a result of the cyber task force that was led by the Lieutenant Governor this year, we are going to move forward with a cyber security unit. And so ESF 20 will be cyber. And what they'll do, just for purposes of explaining, when we found out during the pandemic that we were susceptible, very susceptible to much more international traffic trying to send us phishing emails and doing Trojan horse type emails. So what they would do in a disaster is they would build that moat around us and monitor that moat for any type of cyber intrusion. If there is a coordinated cyber attack and it starts to go into the criminal realm, then they would become one of the unified command agencies looking at how are they going to then go after, prosecute, and bring people to justice for the actual cyber attack. So ESF 20, we're really looking forward to having that capability between DST, it's now AST, the Agency for State Technology, Florida Digital Service, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and others that will be now engaged in that every time we activate. But I think there's one more level that I want to round out this, the emergency support functions. The state of Florida is geographically in 7 regions. Region 1 in the Panhandle, going all the way down to Region 7 in Southeast Florida. At each region, we have 2 individuals for the Florida Division of Emergency Management. We have a regional coordinator who handles preparedness and response activities in each region. That is a Florida Division of Emergency Management employee that lives in that region. And then from last year's, not this current year, but the previous year's legislation, the legislature designated the Division of Emergency Management to hire 7 regional technical assistance individuals in the areas of recovery and mitigation. So we have those 7 individuals that also live in the 7 regions that assist counties and municipalities and other applicants on building out paperwork, doing documentation, submission of project worksheets, and mitigation projects that come to the division. So those are that's our last level of interaction at the county and regional level. So again, emergency coordinating officers, every state agency, ESFs. There's 20 of them in here in the on the floor in the EOC, and then we have regional people in the field as well.
The response and mitigation coordinators, are they already in place, or are you working on getting those in place?
Yeah, so they are already in place. We do have one vacancy right now on the recovery side. Our manager resigned and went and took a job in the private sector here about 3 or 4 months ago, and we're in the process of hiring that. But out of the 14 that we have, we only have one vacancy right now, and it's up here in the recovery mitigation arena up in the Big Bend area, so Region 2 Tallahassee area.
Okay. And you mentioned for the proposed ESF 20, AST, and then FDLE, what is there going to be the single lead agency for that ESF for cybersecurity?
So I think that has not been decided yet, because it's there. I think you got a twofold problem there, Eric, and that is, if it's criminal, it's definitely FDLE. If it's just monitoring for stuff coming into the system, I think that's more of an AST, Florida Digital Service role. So there may be a combined, unified, almost, and I know you've been doing this a while, Eric, we have a unified command structure here within the OC. There may have to be some type of unified command structure inside that ESF to just, if it's criminal, it's FDLE. If it's just basic maintenance, it's AST. So we're going to be working through those issues.
All right, well, let's get into some of the things that we often hear from county commissioners, really with a pending storm, that often raise questions and sometimes make them a little apprehensive. So I wanted to talk about evacuations and evacuation orders. These things can sometimes be confusing, whether the state is issuing a mandatory order. Can you just kind of walk us through kind of the basics of, what's a trigger? What authorities does a local government have? What authorities does the government and the division have on evacuations? And let's just kind of talk about those.
Yeah. So let me, I'm going to try to clear up some stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to alarm people. So let me just talk very clearly about it. First of all, in Florida state statute, there is no definition of a mandatory evacuation order and a voluntary evacuation order. They are only evacuation orders, period. When you look inside a state statute, it just says that county emergency management officials can issue evacuation orders. Now, over decades, going back to the 60s, you've heard this thing creep up: mandatory evacuation order, voluntary evacuation order. There is no difference. All right. Many people will market it as we would like for you to do it, but we physically can't remove you from your house. That's the difference between voluntary or mandatory. You've heard people say, well, we're going to go give you a toe tag to put on your toe if you don't leave, because there's a Cat 5 hurricane coming and you're going to die. Again, that is how the emergency manager at the local level wants to market what they're doing. Again, it's an evacuation order. There is no difference between a voluntary order and a mandatory order. So I think we just start there with a level baseline. Let me rephrase, I don't want to say we, because that includes the governor. I, Kevin Guthrie, Director of Emergency Management in Florida, would rather this decision be made at the local level, right? But I have seen in my tenure as Emergency Management Director at the local level and at the state level that sometimes we have counties that, for lack of a better term, drag their feet. You want just one more National Weather Service report before you make the order. Well, every one of your EM directors has a plan, and they have a clock. They have a calendar or a clock that says, our clearance time for a Cat 3 hurricane is X number of hours. Well, if you wait to issue the evacuation order until you get to a point where you're underneath that time frame, you've got a problem. So we have those same plans here. Every county's comprehensive emergency management plan is sent here to the state. And when we get it, and I'll just say, since I'm from Pasco County, and I don't know if there's any commissioners on here from Pasco County. I know all of them, so I don't think they would have a problem with me saying this. But if the clearance time in Pasco County is 21 hours for a Cat 3 hurricane, we've got to make the decision to push that order out prior to the 21 hours to be successful. Take my role here. If I see that Pasco County is now at 20 hours and they haven't issued an evacuation order, by state statute, I have the authority, the governor has the authority to issue an evacuation order for Pasco County. And that's the things that we're looking at here. We're looking at your plan because your plan has to be submitted to us. I think it's every 2 years. And so when there's a hurricane coming and it's again, let's say it's impacting the Bay Area, we're going to start looking at Pasco, Hernando, Citrus, Pinellas, Hillsborough, start looking at your plans. And we're looking at those timelines. And if we see a county that's not issuing an evacuation order and they have gone very near that timeline and they haven't done it yet, or they go underneath that timeline, then yes, expect the governor or the state to come in and say, we're going to issue an evacuation order for your county. We much rather prefer, and I've heard the governor say this, monitor your local emergency manager, listen to your local county officials. We much rather have that happen. But in the case where we don't have that happen, yes, the governor does have the authority. I have the authority at that time to come in and issue an evacuation order for that county. And I hope that explains the answer to that question, Eric.
Yeah, it does. And it's going to come up again this summer, no doubt. But
No doubt.
And the operative word there, I think, is order and the effect of what does that mean? And you kind of hinted at the, whether they use the term voluntary evacuation. There's sort of a suggestion to you ought to get out of harm's way because we kind of are the experts and we kind of know what's going on.
Right.
If the governor does an evacuation order, what is the effect of that? I mean, again, it's basically a county is dragging its feet. There's concern that people aren't going to get evacuated in time. We saw this with Hurricane Opal back in 1994, where people were stuck out on I-110 going into Alabama. But so I just wanted to kind of focus on that. The effect of that is what? It's suggestive.
It's a suggestion, right? So we physically cannot go pull people from their house. And you'll see that messaging get stronger and stronger and stronger as we get closer and closer to the envelope where we cannot go in and help people anymore. Yeah. I had the unfortunate situation in Pasco County that I had to declare an evacuation order for Hurricane Irma. And, unfortunately, there were some people that did not heed that order. They did not go to a shelter. And we had some injuries and a casualty that happened out of that. But again, it's, the messaging will get harder, a little more firm. And we will say, as we did in Pasco, is please understand that when we have the onset of winds at 40 or 45 miles an hour sustained, emergency services will cease to operate, right? And if you call 911, if you call for help, chances are you may not get that help that you need. So if you are in a situation where you may need assistance, you need to evacuate now. You need to get to a place where we can render assistance to you, whether that's at a shelter or another city or county that's not impacted by the disaster. And that is truly the effect of the order. Is we're trying to tell people, look, we will not be able to perform basic essential mission functions in this disaster until the storm passes by. And please do not put yourself in harm's way to where you need those. And we have, Eric, I know you've been here in the COC. You've heard those conversations where just in Hurricane Michael, we had to figure out, do we have the ability to get a Coast Guard helicopter into a house in Santa Rosa County to pull somebody out from the roof that decided to stay on the beach at the approach of Hurricane Michael? And again, we just could not do that. So it's the hardest thing that I have to do in the public safety arena is to tell somebody, no, we cannot come and help you. You need to do the best you can until we can get there. And that's nobody wants to be in that position.
Yeah, and I think that's great messaging. And I And I can't believe I just dated myself by mentioning Hurricane Opal 1994. I remember that storm. I remember flying in the next day from being out of town, but I also remember my parents were evacuating from Pensacola Beach. So, let's, if we could, just a couple of other questions and then we'll wrap it up. And I know you and your team have already been through this once, and it's COVID, and we got hurricane season coming up. I actually remember early last year sitting in one of your 11:15 calls. It was COVID. It was testing response, and somebody from a county asked the question, "Is anybody talking about hurricane season?" I thought, "Oh my God, I haven't even thought of that." So, can we talk about that again? How are you and the team making plans for dealing with COVID, which I guess is kind of tapering off, but I may be completely off in terms of your role, but the hurricane season.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are well aware of it. In fact, today is the last day of our statewide hurricane exercise that the Division of Emergency Management is running. Today's the last day of that exercise. We're doing basically a wind down, I think, by about noon today. So by the time we get off this call, we should be completely done with that. But this entire week, as we do every year, has been a part of the statewide hurricane exercise. We did, because we know that a lot of emergency management shops across the state are 1-2-person shops, and it's hard to respond to COVID and do the statewide hurricane exercise. So we did not make this year's hurricane exercise mandatory because of that situation, but nevertheless, we have been running it. We are looking at, some of the things that we're doing right now, trying to get, or I shouldn't say trying to, but we're on the cusp of getting some, for lack of a better term, some guidance, some framework out, non-congregate sheltering. We will have a non-congregate sheltering situation this year, at least through September 30th of this year. And that non-congregate sheltering is going to look very different than it did last year. Last year, you could get into a non-congregate shelter if you had an exposure. This year, that non-congregate shelter option will not be available unless you are COVID positive, right? So there's going to be some differences that look there, and that'll be confirmed via rapid test. So again, that's some of the framework that's going to change on non-congregate sheltering, but we're on top of it. Second thing, special needs sheltering. We're probably going to expand the distance between special needs sheltering from 80 to about 100, maybe 110 square feet around the patient, again, just to have some extra precautions there. But again, with patient care, people are already wearing PPE and things of that nature. We've got more than enough PPE as I talk about PPE. If your county emergency management director activates your plan this year and needs personal protective equipment, please put in the mission to request PPE if you need it for your shelter: hand sanitizer, masks, gowns, gloves, goggles, face shields, you name it, we've got it. I've got 3 warehouses full of PPE right now that we are ready to respond to any disaster that we have in this COVID-19 environment. And to your point, even though it seems to be getting better, our infection rate's down, our R0 value is down, still here, but we've got plenty of PPE to respond to that. So please make sure you put in for those requests from the state. We've got plenty of stuff we can send you. But yeah, we are ready for we're ready for hurricane season. One of the things that I hate saying I'm thankful for that we've been activated for 427 days behind me. What I'm really thankful for is that our people now have been responding to COVID plus wildfires, floods, severe weather, tornadoes, a couple of hurricanes last season. We have really gotten good at responding to 2 incidents at one time. Not that we ever want this, not that we ever want it, but if we ever had the situation with 04, 05, where we had 3-4 hurricanes or storms overlapping, I'm highly confident that this team behind me and those men and women can effectively respond to multiple events at the exact same time. So I certainly, if there's a silver lining to COVID and emergency management, it is that we have gotten very, very good at perfecting what we call the co-response or dual or triple response plan.
Kevin, you just mentioned something. The Division of Forestry is running a lot of public service ads on wildfires, and it's referencing the Panhandle and Hurricane Michael, which was always thought that this might be a tinderbox at some point. have, based on your, conversations and the projections of weather for the summer and into the fall, and working with the Division of Forestry, are there concerns and are there contingencies to deal with accessing those areas that, a lot of the fire roads that would go out to be able to put out a fire or contain the fire might be limited? Are there contingencies to address that if there were a fire?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question, Eric, especially for our panhandle counties, west of Tallahassee. I think it's a very real threat. So I'll start with that. We have out here in the hallway posted the drought weather for the state by day. And I look at that every morning when I come in, and, I like to see it when it's blue and green. Right now, there's a lot of yellow, red, and orange on it. And that is indicative of the fact that we are in a drought, or I shouldn't say a drought, but we've got the propensity to have a wildfire just about all the way across the state. But let's focus on the panhandle, as your question asked. When and if that time comes, we continue to execute the timber grant for Hurricane Michael to get those areas deforested, get the debris off the ground as much as we possibly can. And then obviously what's important to all of that is replanting, right? So we're in the process of doing that. I think the number we're somewhere, and I'll get one of my team to pull it. I think we're about $150 million into that grant right now, of about a $300 million grant, but don't quote me on any of that right now until I can get it fact checked. But we continue to do that. Simultaneously, if the event happens, then what we will do is, we'll bring the necessary resources to bear, whatever that might be. It may be DOT, it may be, statewide mutual aid, it may be emergency management assistance compact, bringing stuff from, especially in the panhandle, from South Georgia, Alabama, down to assist and come across state lines. So we are ready for it. From the coordination piece, we talked to the Department of Agriculture quite a bit, especially this time of year, and the chief forester over there. We make sure that, we try to anticipate needs. I know, as you said, they're putting out a lot of PSAs right now on this. So they're trying to do what they can to help mitigate and help prepare people. Now we will be ready to do the response in concert with them, because they'll be the lead agency, but we will certainly do that in concert with them. And I've got those numbers coming here in just one second. So they are, so we've paid out $76,845,000. So again, we continue to push that money out into the panhandle for the timber money, and try to get that stuff picked up, try to get it off the ground, and then obviously reforest it as well.
The reforestation is part of that grant?
Yeah. So the grant was broken up into two phases. Phase one is obviously trying to get the deforestation, to get debris cleaned up and all that. And then there is a replanting side of that house. That's a phase two grant that goes with that.
Great. All right. Well, let's kind of wrap this up, Kevin, if we could. And always like to ask presenters, what are the maybe top 2-3 issues that county commissioners need to think about as we enter hurricane season?
So I appreciate that question, and I know you're going to hear this for probably about the 15th time, but I'm going to take advantage of the fresh audience. I think one of the things that county, or I shouldn't say I think, I know one of the issues that we are all going to have issues with in the future, and how you can help that, is we live now in an Amazon culture. We now live in a shipped culture, where I can pick up the phone, I can go online, I can order what I need, and it's delivered to my house in my pajamas in 24 to 48 hours. We have to be better at setting and managing real expectations in this kind of environment, this kind of culture. I said this on a last Friday on a Chamber of Commerce call. Had Hurricane Dorian made landfall somewhere around St. Lucie, Martin, Palm Beach County, and buzzsawed across as wide and as big as that storm was, it was 3 or 4 times the size of Hurricane Andrew. Had that storm come through, again, St. Lucie, Martin County, and come all the way across over to the west side of the state and exited, we would still be picking up debris today. Just going to pause there. That pause is there for a reason. Folks, that's been 18 months. but we would have still been picking up debris, construction debris, vegetative debris, you name it, we would still be picking it up today. That was a massive, massive storm with wind gusts of over 200 miles an hour. The Florida building code is not rated at 200 miles an hour, right? So it probably would have been the very first test for the Miami-Dade and the Florida building code, because we really haven't had a major Cat 5 storm, Cat 4 storm hit that area since we implemented the Florida building code. So, and then some of that infrastructure has aged almost 20 years since. So the one thing that I think you all can do is help your emergency managers, help your county administrators when you're dealing with your elected, with your constituents, is help them manage the realistic expectation that we're going to do everything in our power, from the local side to the state side to the federal side, to get things back to normal as soon as we possibly can. But it's probably going to take, in some cases, a week or two to get the power back on. It's going to take months to get the debris cleaned up. It's going to take months to get some of the infrastructure back up. In some cases, over in Hurricane Michael right now, I know we're getting ready to start pushing out some mitigation dollars, but there are situations in the Panhandle right now where things are still on a temporary pump, a temporary generator. That's 3 years after the fact. So we need to be able to manage that expectation. And I think that's the single biggest thing that you can do to help your emergency manager is as you interact with your constituents at town halls and pop-up meetings, that you go out there and let people know as we go into hurricane season, help us manage that expectation that we're going to do everything in our power to get things back to normal as soon as possible. But you cannot order dump trucks on Amazon. They are not going to be there tomorrow, right? We just got to manage that expectation. And I know you asked for a couple, but I think I just want to stop with that one thing, because I think that is the biggest thing that I would ask our commissioners to do to help our emergency managers and county administrators.
I've heard that many times, and I think that is a perfect landing point. Manage expectations. You're right. Amazon culture, Instagram culture. We want it now. Where's my power? I've been out for 6 hours. Give me a break. It's not going to happen. So,
right.
Kevin, thank you so much. I know you're busy as heck. I appreciate you blocking out some time for this. I didn't even realize you were running your exercise. So thank you.
Well, hey, that tells you the clout.
That
tells you the clout that the Florida Association of Counties has. They call, they get us on the phone. So again, Eric, I appreciate you and your team over there and everything you guys do to help us out here with our mission every day. You're a valuable partner. I appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.